Good afternoon and welcome back. A few minutes behind schedule, but Mr. McGee, you'll get us back on schedule. We have the Alliance of... Perhaps I'll let you introduce.
Sure.
But here we go. The Maryland Alliance of Energy Contractors and the Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors of Maryland.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Good afternoon. For the record, James McGee with Alexander and Cleaver on behalf of the clients you just mentioned. And with me is Michael G. Ingrandi, President of A.J. Michaels, and also the Chairman of the Maryland Alliance. We filed comments on basically one issue, which was the midstream HVAC program. First, the Alliance, just so Mr. Chairman, you're aware, this might be the first time you saw my client here. They are a group that represents approximately 300 HVAC contractors and plumbers and electricians that mostly operate within BG&E and PEPCO's service territory, and a little bit in a couple other service territories throughout the state. So our comments as it relates to midstream, my clients are not opposed to the midstream program. They're just opposed to how this particular one has been filed and the way that the utilities are trying to implement it. We learned for the first time as a result of the Commission order to have a work group on this topic. We all learned, all the stakeholders, on the end of July what the plans were going to be. There already is an approved midstream program that all the utilities have in their 3-year plans, but really wasn't any detail about it. So they shared that with us and with the other stakeholders at the end of July. And we offered our comments, as did others. And there were many different things about the programs that were troubling. And you heard OPC talk about some of them, the lack of engagement of the distributor community, the lack of engagement of the contractors, the lack of set or rebate structure surrounding who gets what, when, how, things like that. The biggest thing, though, for us is really the purpose of the rebate right now, of where it goes to the distributor as they're proposing or as they're trying to implement. The whole purpose of rebates, as you know, is to change behavior, right? You want the customer to say, okay, I'll buy that higher efficiency, whatever, and you're trying to bridge the gap between what they would have bought and the higher unit. So change some type of behavior. So that's what this program is seeking to do, is to change the behavior of the distributors to stock more higher efficiency unit HVAC systems. The problem is they're already there. The contractors don't have any problem getting these high efficiency units, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 units that the Empower Maryland program rebates. They're there in plentiful amounts. And so we surveyed the members of the Alliance and the associations, and none of them said, oh, I needed a 18 SEER whatever and couldn't get it. Right now, the utilities are trying to rebate an item that is in plentiful amount and isn't something that's necessary. And let me step back a little bit. Other than SMECO, there's one piece of equipment that they're rebating, and that's the ductless mini splits. They have not rolled out a program for the other HVAC equipments, and we're happy for that. And so, along with what OPC recommended, is that you require the utilities to meet with the stakeholder group to go through the best practices as to how this should work. What should happen with the rebate? Where should it go? Should a certain amount be passed on to ratepayers? Should some stay with the distributor as an admin fee? Should there be a third tier which has maybe a 20 SEER level, which isn't as plentiful? Maybe that's the one that we try to incentivize and get the distributors to stock. There's a whole host of things that we really need to figure out first that haven't been done yet. So we'd respectfully ask that before you allow the utilities to branch out with more items, more eligible units for the midstream program, that you have them come to the work group, work out the best practices, and then the work group proposes something to you for your express approval.
Mr. McGee, have you brought these concerns to the attention of the work group?
Yes, unilaterally, all the contractors had the same type of issue. You heard OPC's issue, and yes, that was our one and only opportunity to ask and to get that feedback or give that feedback from the presentations. We asked them data requests, and they're in our filing as to, did they have other information? Did they talk to the distributors first, and they didn't as of that meeting? Did they have other data that we somehow didn't have? And we were talking directly to the distributors, but is there some other, do you have another stock numbers or something to show, wait, there really is a lack of this high efficiency equipment? And no, they didn't survey, they didn't look to see that. So they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist the way they structured the program. And again, this might work in terms of a rebate that's given at that higher level, but there's many different elements that need to be discussed first.
You used the word unilaterally, but I think that maybe you changed. Were you going to say something about unilaterally? Was something done unilaterally?
The utilities unilaterally set forth this program is it, without input from contractors, stakeholders, or distributors.
Okay, I thought it was in the context of the work group. So you presented to the work group?
No, the utilities presented to the work group their plan to go forth with the midstream program. And at that time, the contractors and other stakeholders gave their feedback.
Okay. So there wasn't an iterative process in the work group?
Correct. And I think you heard OPC talk about some of the midstream programs that failed in other locations, did not have that robust engagement of the stakeholder group beforehand. That the distributors that my client has talked to, and he can talk more about it, weren't aware of the program. They were very, very hesitant of the program. They don't want to take on the administrative burden, quite frankly, of the program. They don't have to do that now with the rebates. That's on the contractors. So there's not buy-in with the distributor community at this moment, and that's something that we think is a critical thing that has to happen first.
Your proposal is that we would halt the midstream program effective immediately?
It's two parts. So for the ductless mini splits, that's the one item other than SMECO that is currently in the midstream program. So yes, we would ask that you halt that and put that back to the regular rebate program. Part two is that you don't allow the utilities to go forward and add more other types of equipment, like a heat pump or an air conditioning unit, other things, to the midstream program without going through the work group to discuss best practices and then to have your express approval to some type of proposal.
How long would it take for the work group to retool and address the concerns that you were just raising now? I don't know, how often does this work group meet? Is it feasible that it could occur within a short time frame?
I would say that it's not unreasonable for the work group to have maybe 3 meetings in a 2-month period, something like that. I wouldn't say twice a month. That's probably not realistic time frame. But 3 meetings within a 2-month period was probably the typical practice of how long it may take. So something along those lines. If you ordered it, I'd say within a 90-day period, we would probably, as a work group, be able to come to you with some type of report or proposal. That's my perspective. I'm sure the other stakeholders may have a different one, but.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Is it Mr. Michael?
It's Michael Giangrandi.
Mr. Giangrandi.
Just to explain myself a little bit, Jim said that I'm the owner of an HVAC company that's been in business for 40 years. I've been participating as a volunteer, as an association leader, as a volunteer here with the Empower Maryland program since its inception. We are all volunteer association. What we did, there's a large association in metropolitan Washington area and one in the Baltimore region. We got together. We both have common goals, 2 different territories, but we're in the same business. We got together and decided for the benefit of the Empower Maryland program and for our own membership, we would form the Maryland Alliance for Energy Contractors in order to have one attorney, one lobbyist, and one voice before the commission rather than have 10 different people talking to you about 10 different issues. So that's why I'm here today, but I do represent, there's almost 400 contractors in this group. Now, I'm going to digress a little bit. Jim's a little bit more sophisticated than I am, so bear with me, because I'm going to speak as a contractor, as a person that is working in the field, and I just try to add up 2 and 2 and see if it makes 4. If it doesn't make 4 in my book, it doesn't work. I want to talk about the ductless mini-split system. This program just started. Initially, we didn't get good feedback from the distributors because it was a confusing way to begin it. They didn't have any input in it, and I don't have any feedback at this point in time. So our position is that since it just began, and it began without any input from contractors or distributors, it was just forced upon them, maybe it would be a good idea to halt it until we put all of the programs together in a manageable way. Ductless mini-splits are somewhat different than HVAC equipment because it's a set system. So when you buy a ductless mini-split, there's 2 parts to it, but they're matched. You don't buy this part to match up with another part. It's a combined package, so it's a little bit easier to deal with. In HVAC, our equipment, our components, they have to be sized and matched accordingly in order to reach certain SEER ratings. So we just don't buy a 16 SEER package. We have to buy an outside unit that has a certain efficiency standard, match it up with a certain inside unit. We have to go to AHRI and make sure it meets the standard of the Empower Maryland program. It's much, much more complicated. So that being said, that's all I have to say about ductless mini-split. We just think we should all step back. There's no point in having a partial program in operation when in reality we should be able to put together a program for everybody really under one set of guidelines. MEA earlier today, I wasn't going to bring this up, but they brought up the contractor eligibility. And as a contractor, as a licensed contractor, as a legal contractor, I think this is exceptionally important, and it's also a very big issue among our members. In order to participate in the Empower Maryland program, we had to sign an agreement. We had to supply our license. We had to supply our certificate of insurance. We had to show that we were legitimate contractors. This program is open to, they say, all contractors. I say it's open to anybody who buys from a distributor. Now, they're saying, well, there's going to be more people involved. Well, let me ask you a question. We've been doing Empower Maryland for 5 years. There's 400 of us in our association. We're all members of the Empower Maryland program. What legitimate, honest contractor wouldn't bother to be able to go through the trouble of giving you a copy of his license and his insurance certificate if he was legitimate? So we ask on behalf of all of the contractors that that same requirement be allowed for a contractor to participate in this program. What you'll hear from me in a bit is that the money that goes to the distributor is allowed to keep as much as he wants and then transfers the rest down to the contractor. Well, you may not know, but the contractor under this program is not required to give anything to the ratepayer. Most of us would, but they're not required to. So the illegitimate guy who might have bought a piece of equipment who has been operating without a license, he's going to keep that money anyway. So we're just looking at program accountability. There's no reason why we can't require a contract producer's license. And the distributors are also in favor of that. So those are the 2 issues that I added as I was sitting down in my chair. So let me begin with the rest of the stuff.
Wait and see if they have questions.
I'm sorry.
Let's see if they have questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions so far? Kick me again, please.
Keep going.
Am I going? Okay. Okay. Let's go back to the midstream program. As you know, it replaces the current HVAC program. In our minds, we're wondering why. The HVAC program traditionally has been one of the most successful participating programs in the Empower Maryland portfolio. And this isn't just a tweak to a program, it's a major renovation. It was developed, and I don't want to sound negative here, but we've been, as contractors, we've been bringing this issue up for years. These programs are HVAC programs that have to be implemented by the HVAC contractor. So who's the last person that's talked to about how to implement the program? The HVAC contractor. Who knows better how to sell to the customer or what the customer wants or what they appreciate than the HVAC contractor? That's us. But we knew nothing about this program. It was developed by individuals who have no experience in the HVAC business, either as a contractor or distributor, who have no HVAC sales experience. It just doesn't make any sense. Individuals had no contact with or input from the HVAC community prior to unveiling the program in July, where it was met with universal disapproval. And I want to note, you may think this is funny, especially you, Mr. Richard, that even BG&E Home was staunchly opposed to this program. So universally, all the contractors and all the distributors do not like the way it's set up. Once again, there may be a way to do a midstream program, but I did a lot of research and tried to look across the country who had midstream programs. A lot of the midstream programs aren't this. They're for hot water heaters, they're for circulator pumps. It's different equipment, commercial equipment. This is a different genre. It's a different animal, and I haven't found one in the country that's like this, that has a residential HVAC program that's structured like this. And let me ask you this. What business do you know of that has the goal of increasing sales and attempts to do so by increasing prices? That's not a very successful formula, but that's exactly what happens with this program. The ratepayer is the guy that's being shortchanged. The distributor gets $600. He may keep 100, he may keep 50, he may keep 200. He'll give it to the contractor. The contractor may keep 100 or 200 and wind up giving the ratepayer $100 or $200. What happened to the $600 that went to the ratepayer in the original program? It disappeared. So this program is actually more costly and less beneficial to the ratepayer, and it's not going to increase sales, it's going to reduce sales. Now, to say that this program places a substantial burden on distributors is an understatement. They are not in the business of implementing an Empower Maryland program, nor do they want to be. They don't have the staff. They don't want this financial responsibility. Now, I say this because I've been in business a long time. I know these guys. I've been doing business with Carrier ever since I was in business. With Trane, Rheem, I know them all. I personally spoke with them, and I spoke with them earlier to get their feedback on their program, and they said, well, they're just being contacted and things are going back and forth. We don't quite get what's going on yet. I called them all last Thursday and Friday. I'm authorized to tell you they are not at all happy with the way this program is structured. A couple of them are thinking about not even participating. Carrier has had to send this to their legal department to see if they could even do it, to handle the money and distribute it on behalf of the Empower Maryland program to the contractors. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, and I'm not saying that they won't participate. What I'm telling you is they are really upset by the fact that people are imposing a huge program and burden, financial burden upon them, and they haven't had a word to say about it. That's ludicrous. So, anyway, that's our opinion on that. The ratepayer, obviously, he's getting less money, and that's not the purpose of the program. We're supposed to be benefiting the ratepayer. So the utilities have transferred this responsibility over to a distributor, and the ratepayer is the one that's being shortchanged. And I don't think that's what the legislature intended when they produced the bill, is to have the ratepayer not get the money he's supposed to be getting. And I don't think that's your intention either. I think I pretty much covered what I had to say. Let me get. Oh, well, here's the thing. I mentioned this before. Will a midstream HVAC program work in Maryland? We don't know. I can tell you for a fact there is no problem getting high efficiency equipment. Our distributors want to sell it. They have promotions in the spring and the fall. Most high efficiency equipment, you've probably seen it, there's a Carrier rebate, $1,000 rebate in the April and May advertising you hear on radio, TV. They have these programs for financing and special rebates on all the high efficiency equipment twice a year. That's when we sell most of the equipment because they have a good program. So they want to sell this stuff, and they have it in stock. They don't make money on 14, well, they make money, but they make more money selling 16 and 18 SEER equipment because it's a lot more expensive. We make more money installing it because it takes us an extra day or two. So our goal is to sell this equipment and have a higher profit, have more jobs. So right now, I can tell you what's going to happen is you're going to see 14 SEER sales soar. They already are going high because the rebates have been so low. So, as I said, if this program could work, if this model could work, we would support it because we're in the business of selling energy, of saving energy. Every piece of equipment that plugs into a gas or an electric thing that generates heating, cooling, hot water, we install. Okay, so if this program can improve Empower Maryland, it improves our businesses. So we have no axe to grind here. We're actually on your side. We want good programs. We're afraid this program is going to be the end, the beginning of the end of the HVAC program because of the poor participation, the lack of understanding, and also how are we going to get paid?
Thank you, Mr. Giangrendi. I think
I think that's enough.
You've effectively
ending
made your point.
Ending it with how to get paid is fine with me. Okay, thank you.
Do commissioners have questions of the witnesses? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we will have a number of associations and non-for-profits, including NRDC, NCLC, NHT, and the Sierra Club. And we have a proud Maryland PSC alum coming to the table.
That's it. I no longer have my sweatshirt, but... Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought more were coming as well. Okay.
We're representing all of
Everybody.
them. so,
All right.
Okay.
There we go. Miss.
No problem. My name is Susan Stevens Miller, and I represent the Natural Resources Defense Council and Sierra Club in this proceeding. With me is Mr. Jim Gravatt, who prepared the comments that we filed in this proceeding. These comments were filed on behalf of NRDC, the Sierra Club, the National Housing Trust, and the National Consumer Law Center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gravatt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Stanek. It's a pleasure to be here. We haven't met before. I've appeared before this commission many times. For the last 4 years or so, on behalf of a group of advocates, those listed here as well as many others. Often those comments have been filed under the banner of the Maryland Energy Efficiency Advocates. Truth in this proceeding, I was so far behind in drafting the comments that we didn't have time to give many of the other organizations time to review them to determine whether they could sign on or not. So we try to do better, and we'll try to do better next time. We're strong advocates for energy efficiency because energy efficiency accomplishes a number of really important policy objectives. It's good for the environment. It's an important tool in increasing the availability of environmental justice, addressing the needs of lower income populations. It's, and in that light, it can support equity and energy affordability. And also, at its base, it's about least cost energy service delivery. It's about the obligation that utilities have to provide safe, reliable energy that's affordable for their customers. And in supporting those things, I think there's a potential that someone looks at environmental advocates primarily who are advocating for energy efficiency and says, oh, well, they just want more, that's what it's all about. But actually, the hat that I'm wearing here is about ensuring the defensibility of the energy savings claims. Because as advocates, if the savings are not defensible, we have no case to make. And that wouldn't be acceptable to us. So what I've been asked to do for a number of years now, and I do this in many jurisdictions, is review the filings and make observations about areas that are of concern, areas that we want to support, and areas where we see potential for improvement. So my comments are actually fairly brief. It is the first report of a 3-year cycle There are not a lot of issues at play, I think. We're still waiting to see how this cycle will unfold, but there are a few observations that I'd like to make. And one is, will be of no surprise to the commissioners who've been here for a little while. We say this pretty much at every proceeding. The amount of energy savings and energy efficiency that's available to low-income ratepayers in the state of Maryland is not enough. It is behind what other leading states are providing in terms of low-income energy efficiency. That's true on the single-family side. It's true on the multifamily affordable housing side. And I believe that DHCD has made some very strong efforts in the last couple of years to improve their programs. We certainly want to see how those improvements play out in terms of the savings they deliver and the number of participants they reach. I'm very optimistic. But what we see now, when we look at this first 6-month period, the low-income savings that are attributed to DHCD are less than 0.1% of the total portfolio savings that are reported by Empower. That's a remarkably small number, and we would say that it has to get better. I'd like to applaud the Office of People's Counsel for engaging Apprise, which is, I think, an excellent research and evaluation firm to do the study on low-income populations to get more information that I think can be helpful to DHCD in targeting its programs to reach more customers. I note that the first key recommendation in that report is to define program goals and outcomes, because that's kind of a glaring empty spot when we look at low-income energy efficiency. We have goals in the plan that's approved, but there's no policy objective that says how much energy efficiency should we get for low-income ratepayers. It's something that we've raised before, and we still see that there's merit in trying to determine what an acceptable or appropriate or sufficient goal would be for low-income energy savings. I also want to note the Office of People's Counsel did recommend that if DHCD is not expecting to meet its annual targets, that it revises those targets. I think that's fine. I would also, personally, I would like to see if they do revise the targets, that they also show how they're going to increase to meet the 3-year cycle. I don't want to see savings adjusted downward because there's continues to be some difficulties in achieving the savings. One really bright spot in this semi-annual cycle of reports, cycle's the wrong word, this group of reports, we have in the past encouraged, well, the Commission has encouraged utilities to do more within their own program portfolios to reach low-income customers. And, you know, we've echoed that sentiment. And Commissioner Richard and I have had some discussions about how do we know the extent to which low-income customers might be participating in the programs that the utilities provide. And I was very encouraged to see in these reports, at the last cycle, BGE had launched a food bank efficient lighting distribution program. Now I see that the other utilities have either done that or are in the process of doing that. I think that's terrific. SMECO has done kit distribution to its low-income customers, and importantly, they report that they included information about cross-promoting their other programs, so that they're using the opportunity to provide some efficiency to couple that with more information about how to get more efficiency. I think these are really good things. One thing that there was I believe it was BGE at the request of OPC, provided some information on the QHEC program, how many of those customers might meet the low-income eligibility, and they determined it based on fuel assistance, I think. I think that's also great. What I would encourage the Commission to consider is there a way to direct the utilities to provide more reporting information on the activities that are specifically targeted to low-income customers? Because, again, the conversation that Commissioner Richard and I have had is they may be participating, but we don't know. Well, if the utilities are doing specific program outreach to low-income customers, and we know that it's low-income customers who are participating, let's track that so that we have a better metric, a better way of analyzing how the Empower portfolio as a whole is addressing the needs of the low-income population. Just briefly going to mention that the advocates that I work for have a particular interest in affordable housing energy efficiency. It's long been considered a neglected market. MIHA addresses affordable housing. The utility programs theoretically address multifamily housing that's above that eligibility criterion. It's I think, widely believed that there are lots of people who live in multifamily housing who may just not make the income eligibility, but there's still families that are working to make ends meet. And this, again, has been raised in previous proceedings, but we just don't see very much evidence that the utilities are doing any direct targeting to multifamily properties. SMECO has a multifamily component in their home energy assistance program, the new program that they've rolled out this year. But there's not a lot of evidence, and we'd certainly appreciate the Commission continuing to put some expectations on the utilities that they make sure that they address this market. And the next two are a little harder. WGL and the coordinated programs. I'm trying to remember, I'm sure Mr. Hurley remembers when the first meeting of the electric gas coordination work group was. I think it was at least 2.5 years ago. I know I still lived in DC at the time, so that was 2.5 years ago, so it was at least that. And the fact that in this report the MOUs still weren't executed, and now we're going to start with a phase that's going to last a year. I mean, there are utilities that are doing this in other places. I mean, LADWP and SoCalGas, 4 million customers, 6 million customers, they figured out how to implement joint programs. Doesn't seem to have taken this long, and I apologize that my mind does things like this, but I start hearing about how long it's going to take, and of course, to Mr. Hutter's comment, of course we want things to work, of course we don't want to give customers a bad experience that sours them on this, of course. But how long does it take? I may have said this before, the Empire State Building was completed in 1 year and 45 days. And we're 2.5 years into a work group process, and we still don't have a program on the street. So I didn't say any of this in my written comments because when I got to WGL, I couldn't think of what to say, and people who've known me for a while know that almost never happens. Some people would probably say that has never happened before. The other point I want to say about the coordinated programs, there is some discussion about improving administrative efficiency by coordinating programs. If we don't get more savings as a result of this, all we've done is spent several years of people's time, administrative expenses, to get the same thing that we were getting before. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I would certainly encourage the Commission to expect that the savings increase as a result of this coordination. And the last topic I want to discuss is conservation voltage reduction, which is somewhat far afield from the focus of these advocates on, especially on lower income and multifamily housing affordability. But in the spirit of needing to ensure that the savings are defensible so that we have a case for advocating for more energy efficiency, I'm very concerned about how the CVR savings are reported by the companies. And they may be right, but I don't see very much transparency. It's my understanding that the savings methodology has not been reviewed by Itron, by the independent evaluator. We asked in discovery the utilities what their plans for EM&V were on the CVR programs. Pepco and Delmarva referred to an evaluation of pilot program that was done. The evaluation was completed in July 15, and that evaluation said, we don't have enough data on the Delmarva territory. We recommend you just use the assumptions from Pepco. That may be fine, but that's passed. And there was an error in my written comments. I have to correct the table. I didn't pick it up when we filed it, but Pepco is expecting, at least in their plan, that the portfolio savings, 29+% of the savings are going to come from CVR. And if there's not an agreed upon vetted method for how those savings are determined, I think there's risk that they're not going to be in compliance with the statute. And we have copies, if you'd like, of one of the discovery responses to Delmarva, in particular on CVR, in which they confirm that the savings they're claiming for the CVR program in 2018 were from measures that were installed prior to 2018. Now, to me, on the face of it, and again, that may be fine, but on the face of it, that's not consistent with an environment where the goals are stated as annual savings goals. it's the same to me if you install a furnace that has a 20-year life. With an annual savings goal, you report the savings that are going to occur in the first year. And the other years that's useful in determining the cost effectiveness, the lifetime savings, and all that, but doesn't contribute to a first-year savings goal. But with CVR, it appears that the utilities are assuming that they can continue to report the savings that occur each year as progress towards the annual savings goal. Again, it doesn't make sense to me. I may be wrong, but it raises a concern for me, and I would recommend that this is something that should be figured out.
Mr. Gravatt, in your written comments, and I think you alluded to in your oral statements, the challenges associated with lower income and multifamily units, and there are some structural problems which I think lead to some of these utility programs either performing poorly or being discontinued. Do you have examples of where these programs have succeeded in other states and what we're missing here in Maryland?
I mean, there are low-income programs in most states that have utility energy efficiency. I would say they're always challenging, and there are certain issues, health and safety issues. You go into a house and there's mold or mildew, and the program doesn't have budget to address it. So there are issues that can come up that are beyond the scope of the program's ability to address. But there's a lot of need. So again, in fact, in Maryland, DHCD proposed an approach for dealing with houses like that where the health and safety or other structural issues are too great to allow them to do a comprehensive shell retrofit job. They will now still, and I don't remember what, there's a number for it, but I don't remember which one it is. I'm sure that DHCD can tell you.
But those homes have bigger problems than just weather stripping, right? If you have mold.
Absolutely. Yep. But they may still, now, what they weren't doing before, they would just give them an energy kit and say, we can't do anything. Now they will address the things that would not negatively impact the health and safety and the structure of the occupants in that structure. So they may do appliance upgrades. That's not going to worsen the indoor air quality, and it will provide some energy savings benefits. So I think that's a positive step that will, I think over time, will increase savings for the program. But we look at, I mean, Pennsylvania, I think, is the state that has the highest savings requirement. Pennsylvania requires that 5.5% of the portfolio savings, not budget, but savings, come from eligible low-income households. Not just, and they used to do this methodology where they would assume a certain percentage of low-income households were participating in other programs, and they've thrown that out. They require income verification to confirm that everyone whose savings are contributing to that 5.5% savings portfolio, portfolio level savings, is income eligible. So we're at less, for the first 6 months, less than 0.1% here in Pennsylvania is at 5.5%.
That is quite a difference, I concede. Do commissioners have questions of Mr. Gravatt or Ms. Miller? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Gravatt, about the coordinated programs, did you review WGL's submitted Q1 and Q2 comments?
I did go through them.
They maintain on page 3 that at the time of this report, which was filed August 15th, all memorandums of understanding or agreement have been reviewed, finalized, and are awaiting signatures. Do you think that's the case?
I have no idea, but I do believe that the order that the Commission issued last year required them to be executed by June 1st or June 30th or something like that.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see. I just wonder if you had any insight, since you made some pretty strong comments in that area. I wanted to see if you had insight as to where things were now. I guess we'll ask WGL when they come up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Herman.
Mr. Gravatt, thank you for your presentation. The question I had is, in Pennsylvania, you mentioned that they had to be income qualified. And you also talked about how there are families and participants who might be not low income in terms of, you know, how it might be coded in the utility system, because that's probably a EUSP customer or a MEEP customer or something like that. And there's, you know, a segment above that that isn't able to participate. Do you have any sense of how a state like Pennsylvania, seeking to, you know, in an effort to try to get our numbers up, how do we, you know, I mean, how do we get there? Because I think that customers might not want to discuss their income. People can be sensitive about that. If you have to get customers to participate, you have to give me your income and, things like that. Are there programs in other states that have somehow figured out how to reach, both populations, the low income that are, say, MEP or EUSP eligible, and then those other sort of, lower income, but not necessarily qualifying for those programs?
I think there are probably some small programs in some states that get to that moderate income. There's, I know we've looked at a program in New Jersey that hasn't launched, but it may, that's aimed at low to moderate income. So it's a home performance with Energy Star type of program, but with greater incentives and better financing for families who meet a different income threshold than the low income criterion. So there is still an income eligibility determination there. Some programs, again, I don't know that there are any that are wide scale, look at census data for specific geographies. So let's look at a neighborhood and we can say everybody who lives in this neighborhood, or a high enough percentage of the people who live in this neighborhood are likely to meet the income threshold that we're proposing here, that we're going to go ahead and offer the service. And they might do some kind of neighborhood sweep, where sometimes door-to-door canvassing to engage participants. But it's a huge challenge because we look at folks who meet the low income threshold, and there are a lot of them, and we look at how much would it cost to reach all of them in an acceptable amount of time, and the cost is daunting. And then we look at the next group above that, who may not need everything paid for, but they need a lot of help, and that's a bigger group. And so even though the per customer isn't quite as much, it's still a lot. And so we've looked at how would you structure such a program like that. We did this when I lived in Vermont years ago, but coming up with the funding has not happened a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Next, and finally for today, we will have representatives from the Potomac Edison Company.
That's Aaron Demmer.
Is Baltimore Gas and Electric in the room? Is the company prepared to go forward today? Okay, let's see how we do on time for Potomac Edison, and then you'd follow. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Trout. Would you like to start us off, or one of your colleagues?
I will, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. My name is Jeffrey Trout. I'm counsel to Potomac Edison. With me today are the three leaders of our Maryland Energy Efficiency Program. We're not sitting in the order of the slides, so we'll start at the far left, my far left, your far right. Mr. Jim Longacre is the Director of Implementation. Next to him is Mr. Demaray, who is the Manager of Reporting, and then Mr. Tarosky, who is on my immediate right, left to your right, is the Director of both Compliance and Reporting, so he kind of pulls everything together. We have a relatively short slide deck, and we are going to hit the highlights of that, but not dwell on any particular parts of any particular slides, because we are primarily here to answer your questions, and we will do that. So,
all right. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you very much. Again, my name is Aaron Demaray. As Mr. Trout said, we do have a very brief agenda for you here. We'll talk through the progress of our goals to date, some highlights from the residential and non-residential sections, as well as a budget overview, and then have a few closing remarks for you. So with that, I am on slide number 5.
Moving right along.
We can go to the end if you'd like. Yeah. So the first half of 2018, the companies were focusing mostly on the transition and expansion with their new program offerings. On the residential side, this was mostly seamless with existing programs hitting the ground running at the beginning of the year, with the expanded offerings mostly coming into play within the second quarter. On the C&I side, the companies were transitioning to 2 new vendors, with most operations being fully available to customer outreach, etc., within the second quarter. As you can see, we produced over 35,000 megawatt hours during this time. You can see how that compares. While it is 34% of our annual target, we do expect that a lot of that will be made up within the second half of the year. I'll have more on that in a little bit. Moving to slide number 7, you can see how those savings came from our various sectors and programs. The largest contributors, as you can see, are the Energy Star Products program with 33% of the total, the behavior-based program, 35% of the total, and also the Quick Home Energy Checkup. You can see there were savings in a number of other programs, but those really were the lion's share right there. And speaking to the residential programs in particular, on slide number 8, you can see we achieved over 33,000 megawatt hours just from that sector. The high energy or the high efficiency lighting program contributed 34% of those savings, and over 320,000 discounted LEDs distributed through the program. We're very happy with that. The behavioral program, as you can see, 36%, and it's serving approximately 115,000 customers. It's a very sizable portion of our customer base overall. We're at about 225,000. Quick Home Energy Checkup, actually a very good success story in the first half of the year, achieved essentially the full year savings forecast within the first half of the year. We're very happy with that performance. Then also you can see New Homes program is going ahead of schedule and is at 77% of the full year forecast. In the end, we're expecting that the residential sector, not only did it exceed forecasts within the first half of the year, we expect that it will be slightly over the planned forecast for the first year when we reach the end of the year. Moving on to slide number 9 and the non-residential program highlights. We did achieve approximately 1,500 megawatt hours of gross wholesale savings in the period. As we said, we did begin transitioning implementation contractors during the period, and the first half of the year was taken up mostly with startup activities, and we're expecting that the 1,500 you see will be much, much greater in the second half of the year. We already know orders of magnitude. The forecasts show us greatly exceeding what we had in the first half of the year. And looking back at historic periods when we transitioned to our 2012 to 2014 plan, and also from our 2015 to 2017 plan, very similar situation that we did have a vendor transition, and the first half of the year was really taken up with startup activities, and we were able to make up much of that balance in the second half. We expect something similar this time as well. Moving on to slide number 10. As you can see, the budget's listed here, the approximately $32 million. That is a full year number, so it's not a half year. So the delta that you see, the $23 million, is fairly large, but not as much against a half year projection. While the expenses were 27% of the full year budget, we can say residential spending is pretty much on track with what we expected. The non-residential, as we said, with focusing on startup activities, we did not have large outlays in terms of either outside services or some of the customer incentives that you would expect when you have a full running program, and that's why those numbers are so much lower than the full year projection. So with that, my closing remarks, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you have. Again, residential programs are delivering significant savings, exceeding the planned forecast, and expected to outperform year-end forecasts. While the commercial industrial program, again focusing on the transition and the new vendors, has been building up a sizable pipeline that we expect to convert in the second half of the year. So when we do look forward to the end of the year, we expect to be at or near the full year plan projection, and we're fully committed still to achieving the 2018 to 2020 targets in totality. We have successfully launched all of our programs. They're all available to customers. And then finally, we will be continuing to participate in the work groups and commission processes, be it building a Empire State Building in a year or a little bit longer, whatever it may take. So with that, we are happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Demery. Now that we're comfortably in the fourth quarter and recognizing that your non-residential targets for the first 2 quarters weren't what you would have hoped for, can you give us a status update with a little more granularity as to, are you on target for meeting the goals by 12/31/18?
I can take that. Yes. There's 3 components. There's custom, prescriptive, and direct install. Okay? With the starting probably about April timeframe, fully launched, we're going to be around 75% of the goal for direct install, about 120% of the goal for prescriptive, and probably it's going to be in the 40% for custom. But, you know, I think we reported just short of 300 megawatt hours. We have a pipeline of 14,000 megawatt hours now. But when you're into the custom type projects, you know, a lot of it's dictated when can customers come down, because a lot of it's industrial process improvements and that. So that drives those projects, and they're not done in 2 weeks. They're done over months. So we're building a very strong pipeline.
Thank you. I also read that you have a Google online campaign to either promote or encourage your customers to take advantage of Empower. Can you explain what that's all about?
With some of our vendors, you know, it's just an outreach channel to market our programs. But the channel is very nice because you can monitor how many hits they're, you know, going to the website, how deep they're going into it, and so forth. And so a lot of our vendors have been implementing that with a lot of success.
Which type of vendors would these be?
This are Honeywell for appliances, likewise for appliance turn-in, that type residential.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Herman.
So, a couple of questions. Your QHEC seems to have been very successful in the first half and very low budget and high participation. Is there anything that you can attribute that success to? Or what do you attribute that success? Let me phrase that properly.
Well, in our report, we do have a little bit of the details of that. There is, we felt that there was a strong push on marketing this past quarter that drove a lot of it, as well as the allies that are out in the region have taken up the program and been very active in promoting it as well.
Mm-hmm. What kind of allies are you referring to?
It would be the contractors that can participate in the program itself.
Okay. And I noted that you talked about in your commercial program that you were changing vendors. Were the programs the same? Were the programs different, or were the programs the same and you changed vendors?
Primarily, programs were the same, but custom's a good example. In the previous cycle, for 3 years, we're around 17,000 megawatt hours in the plan. Mm-hmm. Now it's 66,000. So we're expecting to do much deeper projects in that over this 3-year cycle, and it takes a lot of work.
Right. And as you were, can you give me a time frame as to about when you started looking for a new vendor, and then when you were successfully able to bring on a vendor and begin programming.
Yeah, we had our RFPs out right after we filed our plan, and went through that process, had contracts signed, and then started launching in January in terms of building all the back office interfaces, contractor outreach, and so forth.
And I thought I thought I heard you say that you started signing people up in programs in April. Did I hear
Yes.
that correctly?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you very much.
sure.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Trout would be, I expect, disappointed if I didn't ask you about this item I'm going to ask you about. I'm not sure who can answer it. So when staff presented, they had some outliers for cost to achieve in the first quarters, and I've heard the explanation of new vendors and all that stuff, but in your prescriptive program, it was 13,365%. And so I can conceptualize 100% cost, forecast being off, maybe 200%. You get to 1,000, I'm starting to struggle. You get in the 10,000s, I can't even figure that.
I can speak to it a little
How
bit,
can
sir.
you be? How can you be that
You're
far
right,
off?
Commissioner. I would have been disappointed if you hadn't asked that question.
So I think the metric you were looking at was cost to achieve, and again, the results in the first half of the year were very small. Again, we were looking on the transition activity, so you do have a lot of cost going into programs just to start them up, get the infrastructure in place. But when we look at the reported savings, it was a 9 megawatt hours, not 909. So the numbers are so small in the actuals that, again, the cost to achieve that amount in this particular period was extraordinarily high. Now, again, we'd expect that those startup activities be, you want to call it amortized or smoothed out over the course of the program.
Yeah, but when you do your forecasts, don't you factor in startup problems and, new vendors and those kind of things, right?
We do, but forecasts, the way that we run them, we do a plan projection on a yearly basis. So it is a full year that we have the expectation of. So if someone is to say what our half-year expectation was, the closest granularity we have is that full year divided by 2.
All right.
So we don't have the build-up. It might be built into the numbers behind the scenes, but not in the filed plan, sir.
So what should the commission expect to see in that particular slot for year-end numbers, quarter 3 and quarter 4 cost to achieve for your prescriptive area, if that's going to levelize out over the year?
You mentioned 120%, 120 by year end?
Yeah, I mean, in total. You're looking, the 9
megawatt hours
Yeah,
was what was
for
reported.
Custom.
For prescriptive, I believe is what you were saying, sir?
Yeah,
Prescriptive, your custom's only 444%
Right,
off.
right.
That's pretty good.
yeah. I mean, we're going to be about 118% of the target. by year end.
118%, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
that gives me a better.
For instance, we reported 9, and we're at over 6,500 actual now.
And to
All
put
right.
that in context as well, that 9 was against a forecast of 14,000. So again, it's showing that it was just a half year. No, it was a number that was divided by 2.
Fair enough, thank you. That gives me a better feel for where you're at on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at some of the megawatt hours that you claim to have already saved on slide 5. And I'm going back again to a question I asked earlier today to the Office of People's Counsel regarding the impact of zero-emission vehicles and some of the projected sales and goals that the state has for adding those vehicles to the road. I'm curious if Potomac Edison has thought about that in terms of how it would impact some of your goals. Just to point out that the state's goal has 60,000 new vehicles on the road by 2020, which is part of this program year. So has the company thought about that at all? Is that something that is as a concern of yours, or do you have some ideas as to how to address that possible increase in usage?
The way our goals are structured are based on a 2015 year savings. So we have 1.4%, 1.6%, 1.8% against those goals in this 3-year plan. So it's set off of that historical test year as an example. So where this could come into play is that it could raise future goals, but it would be beyond this plan cycle. Because it would be when, looking into the next phase of the plan, you have increased usage, your percentage goals of 2% per year reduction would be higher than it otherwise would be because of the, the addition of electric vehicles to the load.
So that's assuming that the cars don't start coming into the cycle next year, for example.
Even if it comes into the cycle next year, it wouldn't be reflected in our current goal structure. Our current goal structure is based off of the 2015 test years. So what our sales levels were in 2015 are 1.4%, 1.6% in 2019, and 1.8% in 2020 are based off of that historic year. So, but when we get to the next phase and new goals are set at 2%, 2% of a higher amount is going to be increased. It's going to be even more challenging, especially given the reduced savings available from lighting, which we've talked a lot about today.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you to Potomac Edison for appearing today.
Thank you.
And finally, for today, we will have representatives from the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company.
No, we haven't.
Just like the pull it out. This.
Amanda.
Can we unhook this?
First time presenting.
That's fine. I put PEs on.
Yeah, I knew.
Okay, yeah, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you get for not having a book. Baltimore Gas is tomorrow's book, so I don't have that binder. Good afternoon to BG&E. Your presentation is loaded, so I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Christia Ravenel. I'm Assistant General Counsel over at BGE. I'm actually new, and I'm taking over for the Empower project.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. So we're here to present the semi-annual report. I'm accompanied by 3 managers of energy efficiency. I have Chris Walls, who will be covering residential, Bill Wolf, who's covering commercial and industrial, and Amanda Janaski, covering behavioral and demand response. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chris.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. So I'm going to first just cover on one slide overall our portfolio. So this is reflective of both residential and C&I energy efficiency efforts. So specifically, we are on target to meet our full year filed megawatt hour savings forecast. Through June 30th, BG achieved our annual energy savings of about 341,000 megawatt hours in total. That equates to 53% of our expected. We would expect to hit 50%. We hit 53%. That equates to a little over 1% of our total expected energy savings compared to our gross wholesale 2016 baseline. And that will absolutely get us on current path to achieving the 2% target. Digging in a little bit deeper, 64% of the incentives that we provided, or $38 million, was spent in order to achieve these energy savings. But how that does translate to customers and the benefits that they see is the measures that we installed just in Q1 and Q2 will result over the life of those measures of about $250 million for customers, Central Maryland BG customers, to save. We continue to keep a laser focus on how we're doing in our customers' minds regarding customer satisfaction, and we're very proud to report that the recent J.D. Power results show us number 3 among 16 utilities, and that was up from 6 last year in their 2018 Electric Utility Residential Customer Satisfaction Survey. And we're very proud to report we were number 1 on the Utility Trusted Brand and Customer Engagement report. I would love to say energy efficiency and demand response efforts contributed completely and solely to those. They did not. However, we do know that they are a significant portion of that, and we're proud to report that. And then lastly, in April, we were honored once again for our 8th consecutive year in a row being an Energy Star Partner of the Year Sustained Excellence Award winner. Next slide. So now, specifically for residential, and Chairman Stanek, since you're new to Empower and this is the first time we've been in front of you, we wanted to just very quickly, and each of us will very quickly go through our program offerings. But the 3 buckets there you see, first is retail-based programs where we have lighting markdowns. We work with retailers to provide incentives for appliances, Energy Star appliances, smart thermostats. We have what we call our contractor or retrofit-based programs, and those are directed towards qualifying contractors where they do a little bit more detailed or elaborate energy savings in customers' homes, and in return we provide those customers incentives. So they come in the form either of HVAC incentives or with a home performance with Energy Star. That would be a whole house energy efficiency upgrade that a customer would receive, and then ultimately that would result in a rebate. Or, and we're up to nearly 280,000 since 2009 quick home energy checkups where we go into each customer's home and spend about an hour and direct install energy efficiency measures, and then give that customer some education around energy efficiency and what they might do next to save even more money. And then ultimately a builder program designed to incent builders building new homes to ensure that those homes are energy efficient. Next slide. So for the first half of the results of our residential program, we achieved 51% of our 2018 annual forecasted megawatt hour goal. That was driven in large part to lighting. We've sold over 1.7 million bulbs through our markdown program. We're up to about 31 million total bulbs since 2009. As I stated before, Quick Home Energy Checkup was another big driver in this, and you can see there just in the first half nearly 170,000 individual measures. These are faucet aerators, low flow shower heads, individual light bulbs, all installed just in the first half of 2018. And then lastly, what's driving the residential programs also is our recycling program, where we achieved 57% of our 2018 forecasted annual megawatt hour savings. And specifically, what we're looking at is trying to enhance each of these programs, and we had a particular success there where we're co-delivering programs, so trying to add more value when a customer engages with us. Why not try to get them to sign up for 2 programs simultaneously if they're going to be home all day anyway? So in this particular case, we had 700 customers schedule a quick home energy checkup with us while they were also scheduling an appliance recycling pickup. And then we always want to be out in the community, and so we had quite another successful drop-off event for 300 units collected for our recycling. And that's where we go out and we'll blitz a community from a marketing perspective and tell them we're going to be at this location on a specific date, and customers can bring in their window air conditioning units, their working window air conditioning units, and we give them a $25 incentive to bring those in. And it's another way for us to engage with customers as well as cross-selling our other programs.
So, Mr. Walls, regarding the customers that opted to schedule a QHEC while scheduling appliance recycling pickup, what type of what do you say to them to convince them to take on that extra opportunity?
Sure.
We're simply looking to get rid of an old appliance.
Right. So typically what we'll say is, you're going to be home all day. How about scheduling a quick home energy checkup? And if we can link those 2 schedules, we aren't always successful because sometimes the customer only wants to engage with us with one particular program. But we tell them the benefits, just like we would tell any particular customer. We tell them about the benefits of participating in a quick home. You're going to be home all day. Why not try to get both of these programs? That way you can multiply your energy savings that will come from the program and the benefits that you'll get from the program. And like I said, it's a great opportunity as well for us to upsell and cross-sell additional programs when we're in front of that customer explaining the energy savings that ultimately they could achieve by participating in a quick home energy checkup.
And that was just during the Q1, Q2 period?
Correct. And we continue to look, I could tell you about other situations like Quick Home and our Peak Rewards program where we're trying to co-deliver both of those programs. So we're looking at the entire portfolio of what makes the most sense of a way to either co-deliver or co-sell multiple programs. You certainly see it on an Amazon website as an example when you're clicking on to buy something, and then down below it'll say other customers have chosen. Well, this is the sort of verbal equivalent of that, where we're cross-selling verbally to a customer when we're talking to them, or even with our marketing materials, co-delivering and co-promoting similar programs.
Thanks.
So one point before we get off the residential and I turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Wolf, I felt that I wanted to at least respectfully defend our position on midstream. There's been a lot of discussion, and I'll very quickly run through our position on that. The why of why we're doing midstream is that this commission has been clear, and you heard a little bit about it this morning. You want innovation, you want other ideas. We too want that. I think you heard a little bit this morning as well about how lighting, we believe, is going away. And we can debate exactly when it'll go away, maybe even down to the month and the year. But the fact is that that is going away in some form. And so we need to continue to expand and be creative and innovative about how we're running our programs. So one of the examples, or several of the examples I talked about, is co-delivering programs. We're looking at, we introduced the Smart Thermostat program. We looked at, and we are introducing a midstream appliance program as well, in addition to a midstream HVAC program, and a number of other innovative ideas to continue to be flexible and continue to be creative about how we achieve our energy savings. So that's the why. That's the reason why we're moving to midstream. And of course, midstream HVAC is another example. Specifically the what, just so we're clear, and Commissioner Herman, you asked this this morning, your understanding is that the incentive, why are we talking about customer incentives if they go to the distributor? And you're absolutely correct. And in my way of thinking, it's aligned with yours in that the midstream idea is, instead of doing a downstream incentive to a customer, you move that incentive, you make it one, and this is the critical element, you make it a lot smaller, and you're affecting the entire inventory of that distributor. So we're moving that incentive away from the customer. I think what is at issue here and what you've heard is we're debating about the transition. I think we all agree that midstream is our future. It's the approach that we need to absolutely take, and we clearly need to be diligent and thoughtful about what we're doing. That's the reason why we chose to only go with ductless mini splits. We didn't want to push the market too much and have the HVAC contractors not understand our direction, have customers not understand our direction. So we felt if we use just one measure, then that's the way we can test this. We can build a distributor base. We can understand what key elements and key concerns distributors have in this, and what elements and concerns HVAC contractors have in this. So we absolutely are listening, and we are attempting to understand concerns. I do think, though, that when it is a big change when you're talking about a rather large incentive that previously went to a customer where HVAC contractors use that incentive. Now that incentive, in our view, needs to go away. It's unsustainable. We can absolutely start to drive down costs in these programs, and in the HVAC and the midstream appliance or retail products program, and drive up energy savings. That's the broader direction where we're trying to head. And we've looked nationally and have seen other examples, successful examples of these types of programs. I will say they haven't been around for years and years and years. We're not bleeding edge, but we certainly are out in front. Is it going to be perfect? Do we know every potential hurdle around the corner? No, but I offer up to you that we are absolutely being thoughtful about what we're doing and considering the end goal, which is to increase energy savings and overall lower cost and be more effective about what we're doing, in light of the fact that, like I said previously, we need to remain flexible and need to remain responsive as lighting and other programs, for that matter, continue to change.
Mr. Wall, can I ask you a question in that regard?
Sure.
So Mr. Giangrande, on behalf of the Alliance, asserted that there was no coordination with the distributors, and that's troubling for me to hear. If that occurred and the work group really was just kind of presented unilaterally from the utilities, here's what we're going to do. Is that accurate? Is that right?
My explanation of it is that it is not accurate. When we were before the stakeholder work group, which was July 24th, we were asked that question, have you talked to distributors? And we were very open with that, and we've said no, we have not talked to our local distributors, those distributors locally. However, we have, based on our consultants that are helping us implement these programs, they have implemented midstream in other markets. And while I certainly wouldn't sit here and tell you that every distributor is like every other distributor, they are a body of individuals and professionals that we believe we have we got good insights from nationally with distributors nationally. And some of them, such as a Carrier or Trane, they perform nationally. And so we didn't feel at that point that it was necessary to get their specific feedback. We certainly have since that time. Part of what that meeting was intended to do was share more detail about the rollout of the midstream program and seek feedback. To be clear as well, we did file this back in September of 2017, and we at that point were expecting comments from any interested party around midstream like we would any other program. And we got, at that point, no specific concerns or feedbacks from any particular stakeholder other than what you've heard so far, which is, okay, midstream is a change. Let's make sure we're thoughtful about how we roll it out, as evidenced by Office of People's Counsel and VEIC's comments this morning.
Yeah, the only problem I see with all that is the local stakeholders, the local people, the Alliance, Maryland, and the distributors, Maryland, aren't necessarily on the same page, so they're talking to each other. They're getting all fired up about this program, and you're taking your feedback from national level folks.
Well,
so sometimes there's a disconnect, obviously, between the central office and the local offices.
Absolutely. I agree and hear you loud and clear. Since that time, and again, we were very transparent. We didn't present ourselves or represent the rollout, as we've already talked with every distributor
prior to doing that, we wanted to make sure that we did hear from stakeholders, and whether there were any distributors even in attendance during that meeting. We heard from HVAC contractors as well, but we had told them at that time, our next step is to start rolling this out to distributors and reaching out to them and getting specific feedback. We've identified, I think at last number, just under 10 distributors. We've gotten 3 signed up so far, and we intend to continue to work with the other distributors to get them signed up for the program. But hear me when I say this too, is that I think what we're debating here is the transition period, how to transition. It sounds like I think you would agree that universally everyone agrees that midstream is the next step for us to take the HVAC rebate program and the appliance program. That's a model, a delivery model that we believe will reap us rewards. Like any transition in any situation, the transition is not always perfect and to the liking of every stakeholder. But we certainly want to hear from every stakeholder, which we have.
Yeah, I was really concerned when I heard him say that there are several distributors thinking about pulling out of the program completely, and that may be a result of the transition that you allude to.
Yeah, and that clearly concerns us, and I'm before you to tell you we will absolutely work with those distributors to try to address their concerns. It is a change. Admittedly, it is a change for them.
Very quickly, let me go back to the low flow shower head measures. How long do we count those for? I think we asked this before, but once they're installed, or once they're given to the in the kit, do we count them forever? Or?
Well, to be clear, this is not a kit. We're actually installing these.
Okay, so once we install,
we unscrew and then screw the.
How long do we count them for?
Boy, that's I can't believe I don't know that, because I've been doing this for 10 years and I can't remember the particular measure life. I would guess, and we can follow up with you, and before the end of this presentation, I'll probably have a number, but my guess is 10 years for that faucet aerator as a. I'm sorry. It's Mr. Loper, who's certainly the authority on most measure lives and cost-benefit analysis, has reported 5 years.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So now I'll turn it over to my I'm sorry.
Not quite ready to leave midstream yet, Mr. Wallace.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
No worries.
Tell me again what measures are in midstream. I thought I heard thermostats, which sounded a little strange to me.
No.
I know I heard HVAC and appliance.
Right. So to be clear, you could argue that lighting, our lighting markdown program, and I in no way want to complicate this or confuse this, but that's in effect been a midstream type of delivery for 10 years. But what we're proposing initially is ductless mini splits under the HVAC rebate program initially, and move that to midstream, and then ultimately move every measure, and this is BGE specifically, every measure to midstream in short order within months afterwards. Midstream.
Every measure? What do you mean by every measure?
Every measure meaning every measure that we currently have downstream. So that would be central air conditioners, that's heat pumps, that is geothermal heat pumps. When you look at our HVAC downstream rebate program, where we today pay a rebate or an incentive to a customer, we would move those measures as well away from downstream and into the midstream model. So we would be.
Okay, and you seem to think that was everybody uniformly accepted that that's where we were going. I'm not sure that I heard that, and I think part of what I heard was some concern that the customer's not getting the rebate, or the contractor's not controlling the rebate, or the customer's not getting the rebate. So do we actually have consensus that we should take everything up to a midstream? Because again, to me, I've been to the store and I've seen light bulbs, and it says this reflects your discount of $3, $6, whatever dollars it was, and so your total price is X, which reflects a discount, which I guess is a midstream, because I'm not having to apply for a rebate or getting an instant rebate or anything like that. But do we actually have consensus that everything is going to move to that?
No, I don't believe that we do have specific consensus among all parties that ultimately that is the direction to move all midstream or all downstream measures in HVAC and the appliance rebate program up to midstream. I think when you move one, though, provided that one because you're basically implementing it the same way that you would not build. Now I've got two models running simultaneously, and that's not the direction I think that we would want to head. Is I've built in infrastructure and costs to deliver a midstream program within the same program, simultaneously still delivering a downstream program. The broader strategy and intent is to take all HVAC rebates at some point and move them all to the midstream model.
Okay, and we heard some concerns with respect to whether or not, whether these distributors need to have some sort of form of qualification, and so I'll ask you to address that. And also how they, that there's concerns that there should be some sort of rules with respect to what do they do with the incentive that they receive. Can you address both of those?
Sure, yeah. So I'll address the second one first, which is that should there be rules around where the incentive goes. So we did hear loud and clear from the various stakeholders when we had that particular stakeholder work group meeting, where we initially had proposed that the incentive not be determined in any particular way. So that the incentive that would go to the distributor in theory could keep that entire incentive. Now mind you, remember, we're talking today about a full downstream incentive. Our direction and belief is to lower that incentive very, very quickly. But back to the point, that distributor incentive would remain with the distributor, and the distributor could do with it what he or she chose. There was a lot of concern about where does that incentive go? Don't we want to put some rules around that? So we did put a rule around it that anything that the distributor does not keep for themselves must go to the customer. To be clear, we did not define exactly how much should go to the customer. Our belief is that market conditions will take hold here. That today an HVAC contractor already knows what they're getting for an incentive. So they will go to their distributor and say, well, wait a minute, it was $400. What happened to the $400? The distributor says, well, I kept $50 for my administrative burden in capturing this information. So the HVAC contractor then negotiates with that distributor to say, I'll take the remaining and apply it to the bill for the customer. It's done today when manufacturers provide incentives that are seasonal incentives through the distributor. The HVAC contractor can do with it ultimately what they will. Sometimes they choose to pass it down to the customer. We believe that they will, and our tracking system will afford us that visibility, and that's something that we will track ongoing and understand what portion of that incentive goes down to the customer and what amount that incentive goes to the customer. But to go back to your earlier point, the incentive that today goes to the customer is designed to be lowered significantly, rather rapidly, and the incentive is only to the distributor, and that's the end game, so that you're affecting the change of the inventory of that distributor. That's
right, and I understand, at least what I understood the theory to be, is that, folks are not carrying these really super efficient appliances because people aren't buying them because they're too expensive, right? So that's sort of, that's what I heard, I think, last time around. So in order to get them to, carry these things and even carry them exclusively so that you can't buy the non-efficient, the lower efficiency, or you're right, the lower efficiency.
Right. It still meets code, but it's lower efficiency.
Still meets code, but it's, and so I guess I'm having a hard time seeing how the midstream, is it, if the distributor can do whatever they want with it, they could still carry, couldn't they just carry a few of them and then, I'm having a hard time.
Sure. So we believe that over 10 years we've built a significant amount of awareness from a customer standpoint that when their system fails, or when it's time for them to replace their HVAC system, they are going to ask their HVAC contractor, what are my options? I believe that customers will pull through that high efficiency equipment, so there'll still be a need for that high efficiency equipment. You heard earlier Mr. Giagrandi saying that the margin of the higher efficiency equipment is better for them. So their value proposition to the customer will be related to energy efficiency as well. And we are working with the distributors to ensure that they are incentivized sufficiently to carry higher efficiency equipment. So in my mind, that three-pronged or that area focus is the theory behind midstream, is that you're moving further up the supply chain to affect a change, to influence inventory and influence behavior, not just at the customer, but all the way up the supply chain. And to be clear, like I said, we're working on building on 10 years. I see this as an exclamation point to what we've done for the last 10 years with customers, where we've given much, much greater awareness around the benefits of energy efficiency. Introducing a midstream program now puts an exclamation point on that effort, while also driving up energy savings and lowering costs over time. Remember, I no longer have to provide a rebate to a customer, so I don't have to pay for the tracking and the rebate processing of that. I likely may get less calls from customers as well. The overall administration of the program will ultimately go in a direction that's lower.
So we heard that the distributors are complaining that it's costly to do this because they have to implement some systems, and while I understand that, it seems to me that they're also getting a benefit because they're getting an incentive.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's what the incentive is designed to do, is offset any administrative or additional tracking or reporting requirements, and for that matter training that they would need to incur. And just one quick point too, where it was opined that there are plenty of ductless mini splits, while there might be today at a certain SEER level, and aside from ductless mini splits, these programs are designed to continue to evolve. When I first started, our incentives were around 14 SEER, and now we're incentivizing 16 SEER. So it's designed to continue to move to the higher efficiency level as manufacturers become more sophisticated, as customers become more aware of greater efficiencies. I can look at my old refrigerator in the basement. Don't tell anybody that I have a second refrigerator in the basement, but it cost me double what my current refrigerator cost me.
Well, I won't. If you don't tell me about yours in your basement, I won't tell you about mine in my garage. And I'm not giving it up. But I guess, do you have any response, or how would you anticipate working with contractors and distributors to address some of the concerns that we've heard here with respect to the midstream programs?
My suggestion would be to continue the dialogue, but I would not agree with their recommendation of stopping or pulling back, but rather continue with our current plan, which is to move the ductless mini splits to midstream, gather valuable intelligence, provide that feedback, continue to work with our distributors to get more and more distributors on board. That was the intent of that first measure foray into this, and to continue to work with the HVAC contractors and hear their concerns. Full transparency, you mentioned about the qualifications as well. That's one other quick point that you had mentioned, and I believe that the qualifications for an HVAC contractor is part of their industry standards, and I'm not so sure that's specifically the place for Empower to address that. We certainly believe in high quality delivery of HVAC systems, but that's why they have alliances, and that's why they have associations to maximize the quality that they are delivering to customers.
Thank you, Mr. Walls.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So BG&E C&I portfolio continues to provide programs and tools to really help all types of businesses be more efficient, and we address all types of customer sizes. We do this through two major groups. The first is to provide programs for what we call capital-intensive projects. And these are typically used in building retrofits and installation of new equipment where a customer is going to have some capital outlay. Our largest program is our Energy Solutions for Business program. That includes prescriptive, custom, and new construction measures, and that it addresses measures such as lighting, HVAC, chillers, kitchen equipment, refrigeration, pretty much across the board. Next, we have our Small Business Energy Solutions program. This is a turnkey direct install program. And this is designed to help small businesses save energy, and we do this through a 70% incentive. Next is our instant lighting discount, our midstream program. You've heard Mr. Walls talk a lot about midstream. Ours is just focused on lighting. Again, this is just direct incentives at the distributor. We have 9 distributors participating in this program. It's been very successful. We've been running this for about 2.5 years. It is now our second largest program, and it does it at an extremely low cost. Last is our combined heat and power. This is where customers get some fairly large incentives, up to $2.5 million, and that's for the installation of new CHP equipment. The second group is designed to sort of optimize building operation and performance through non-capital expenditures. So for customers that don't have a lot of upfront capital, we do this through our building tune-up and operational training programs. We provide building analytics tools that perform basically virtual audits on a building's performance, so a customer can understand how their building is performing, and then we also provide recommendations on how they can improve that performance. And finally is our automated benchmarking tool. This is used in conjunction with EPA's Portfolio Manager, and basically it provides a score for a building. What we'd like to see is building score above 75. It's a typical 1 to 100 scoring. In fact, buildings that achieve 75 or better can even get a plaque on their building. So BG&E, next slide. BG&E has had a successful first half. BG&E C&I programs achieved 52% or 89,000 megawatt hours of the 2018 annual's energy forecast. And we did this utilizing only 32% of the projected budget. And again, a lot of that was because midstream was so successful and continues to be a very low-cost program. We saw strong performances in the prescriptive, building tune-up, and midstream lighting programs. And 2 of our programs, building tune-up and midstream, have already achieved their full annual forecast. I should note that staff had indicated that the cost to achieve. Mentioned BG&E's custom program. The custom program is behind target. We're doing several things to address this. First, we held a customer tech expo at the M&T Bank Stadium, and we had over 200 participants, and we really solicited the idea of trying to get customers to look at very large, complex projects within their facilities. And as a result of this and some large promotion by our account executives, we've seen a significant increase in the pipeline for the second half, so we really expect the custom program to catch up. And last, we have 2 CHP projects under construction. We expected these to be completed in either late 2018 or early 2019. So as part of BG&E's semi-annual report, BG&E did make 2 requests. The first has been mentioned by several groups today. The first is a request for a new nonprofit energy advance pilot. This was a result of the Commission Order 88514, where the Commission had sort of encouraged parties to investigate whether certain aspects of what Baltimore City had proposed in their 18 through 20 proposal could be implemented. The Commission had rejected their proposals. So BG&E, along with several other stakeholders, met on this. And one of the recommendations that came out of that was that since BG&E is already doing a small business energy advance, that maybe we could do a pilot. And so we're pleased to propose that to you today. This would serve this would serve nonprofits that directly serve individuals needing assistance. What we're trying to do is do the mid-sized nonprofits. Large organizations such as Towson University, Johns Hopkins, they're nonprofits. Obviously, they don't need $20,000, $30,000 advance. What we're really looking for is the nonprofits that really can help the people on the street. We're looking for those organizations that serve low income, elderly, the disabled or displaced, or the abused. And that's where we're going to really focus our promotions at. This would be an advance. BG&E is not a lending institution, so there would be no interest, no credit checks, no credit reporting or collection activity, and obviously we would not shut off for non-payment. The pilot would advance up to $30,000 per customer. We really expect the average advance to be closer to around $15,000. We'll focus on lighting because that provides the biggest bang for your buck. And we would be utilizing up to $540,000 from the BG&E's commission-approved PID budget. The second request is to raise the incentive caps for both the small and large building tune-up programs. As I mentioned before, the building tune-up program has been extremely successful in the first half, but we kind of feel that we have missed some opportunities due to larger projects. So what BG&E is requesting that we raise the small cap from $15,000 to $25,000 and the large cap from $30,000 to $50,000. And again, because of the efficiency of this program, there's no need for a budget increase. Any questions? Okay, if not, I will turn it over to Ms. Janowski.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. I have the pleasure to report out on BGE's behavioral and demand response programs. I do recognize that my presentation is the last one for the day, and I'm sure everyone wants me to wrap up quickly. So I'll try to appease the crowd. Let me know if you have any questions throughout my presentation. So BGE's behavioral program is a multi-channel delivery platform that provides customers insights into their energy usage, which is made available through smart meter data to drive energy savings. The behavioral program provides reports, alerts, tips, and online tools that are designed to educate customers about their energy consumption, compare themselves to their neighbors, and their own usage over time, and also encourage customers to take action, thereby lowering their bills. The behavioral program is a valuable marketing means for our other Empower programs. We've used our home energy reports previously to promote quick home energy checkups, appliance recycling, rebate programs, and home performance with Energy Star. The program is also wide-reaching for our customers. It touches all types of customers, including limited income and multifamily. The program can also be tailored to a customer's preference. Customers have a choice of whether or not reports and alerts are sent to them via text, email, direct mail, or phone. In addition, customers can access their usage through BGE.com or BGE's mobile app, which is referenced in the slide picture above. For the first half of the year, the behavioral program achieved 62% of its annual 2018 energy forecast. We had 927,000 customers enrolled in our program and sent 4.7 million home energy reports that include both paper and email. We had 418,000 customers visit the online tools online, and we generated over 742,000 high usage alerts to make customers aware about their increasing usage and help them take steps to avoid a potential high bill. In addition to the electricity savings this program generates for customers, it also helps customers save gas. And for the first half of the year, we reduced 2.6 million therms. We've also focused on a couple of program enhancements for the first half of the year. One of them was a series of promotions in the email home energy reports to ensure the behavioral program remains wide-reaching and engaging for all customer groups. The limited income module that we ran promoted weatherization assistance program and the limited income energy efficiency program through DHCD. The energy home audit module, which promotes customers to complete the audit to help drive greater accuracy as to what uses most in their home and what tips we should target for them, were also included in this promotion series. Additionally, we've expanded our tips library to include smart home upgrade tips and electric vehicle tips for our customers. Lastly, for the first half of the year, we also improved the disaggregation with the home energy analysis to provide energy disaggregation on a monthly basis for the tool known to customers as what uses most. The view of the widget before was an annualized view. of their energy consumption, and now with the enhancement, the widget provides more relevant data for the period the customer is looking at. Are there any questions about the behavioral program before I move on to demand response? Okay. So lastly, BGE's demand response program is a direct load control program to help ease the burden of BGE's electric delivery system and reduce the need for additional power plants in Maryland. We offer two types of direct load control programs for our customers. The first one is the air conditioning program. Customers agree to allow BGE to cycle their air conditioning, which is typically during the summer peak, at either 50, 75, or 100%. They receive a total of bill credits up to $100 in their BGE bill, which runs from June to September. The second program is BGE's electric water heater program. Customers agree to have a switch installed that allows BGE to turn off the electricity to their water heater tank during periods of peak demand again. They receive a total of $25 in bill credits from November to February. For the first half of the year, the air conditioning program had 316,000 customers enrolled, with 334,000 switch and legacy thermostats and 16,000 smart thermostats installed. If you recall, when we previously presented to you, we recently began installing the ecobee 3 Lite thermostats, which is a Wi-Fi thermostat that provides customers the flexibility to access their thermostat controls from anywhere using an Android or Apple iOS device. This added benefit to our program helps customers conserve energy and reduce their energy bill on a day-to-day basis. BGE's Smart Thermostat campaign uses subtle messaging tactics between two customer groups, millennials and Gen X's. And on my PowerPoint slide, I'm showing you two pictures of the marketing materials that we used. We've done studies to show that millennials find connectivity engaging, while Gen X and above find a greater focus on monetary value. So in the two pictures on the slide or the picture with the person is for the Gen X and above campaign, and the millennial campaign, as you can see, focuses on the cell phone, and there's a small Wi-Fi symbol that you probably can't make, but again, that resonates with the millennial population. At the same time, though, you'll notice that the two pieces look kind of similar, and that's on purpose. We want to remain to have a similar look and feel to our marketing messages to our customers because that's how they trust us. However, slight marketing changes has proven to be impactful to our program to gain enrollments. Moving on to our water heater program, in the first half of the year, we had 22,000 customers enrolled with 23,000 devices installed. I can say for the first half of the year, we did have a very aggressive water heater campaign to push up enrollments. However, we did not receive as many enrollments as we would like. We wanted to focus on existing AC customers, advising that they could receive bill credits all year with enrollment to the water heater program. However, even with our very targeted messaging, we had a very low take rate and paused the program around Q3 to address the customer barriers that we were seeing. The barriers that we saw and that we're implementing changes right now in Q3 and Q4 include updating our marketing graphics to make sure customers understand the difference between an electric and a gas water heater. We had graphics previously on our marketing materials, but we noticed that there was an opportunity to be more granular with how to show customers and make them understand. Additionally, the other barrier that customers came up against was the inspection that some counties require. We updated our marketing materials to make sure to call out to customers very early in the enrollment process that an inspection may be required by their county, so that way there was no surprises once we got to their house to do the enrollment. That is the end of my presentation. What questions do you have?
Yeah. I'm interested to know, you in your report you talk about the fact that PJM does require that there be a matching of winter and summer resources, and that'll allow you to continue to receive the capacity payment. So how matched are you now? Are you are you able to continue to do your demand response program with the inside the capacity performance requirements?
So we are currently exploring that. So there's a task force that BGE put together, has been leading with PJM, and we've been exploring ways of how to move forward with the capacity market changes. I will say there was a favorable ruling today that the program requirements that we put together is favorable for us moving forward. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to find a way to continue to operate our assets in the capacity market.
Okay, and given to get that capacity payment, you're going to either need to aggregate or, depending on what happened, I haven't had a chance to look at what exactly happened on the, if we're going to look at this as a demand side issue. But are you trying to
I mean, use the fact that you need to get this capacity payment in order, or use some of this capacity payment to perhaps better incentivize the water campaign, the water heater campaign.
So the matching summer and winter resources, that was a program, you could say, requirement for previously the way the program was going to work with PJM. From what I understand, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but what I understand is that we're moving away from that, and we're going to redefine the portfolio per the requirements that the task force put together. When it comes to the capacity payments that we get, we're looking at the water heater and AC program to understand if the structure is best for customers. And we're going through some evaluations internally to measure the effectiveness, the cost effectiveness of the program, and to figure out how we can structure it better for customers.
Okay. Okay, so you're still trying to balance what the summer-only resources accommodation, whatever it is, and I know they voted on it today, versus trying to actually qualify for continued capacity payments. So that's still in flux.
I would say it's totally in an investigation research method still.
Okay. All right, but that's something that probably needs to be resolved pretty quickly because I think the demand response programs really kind of hinge on that, whether we're going to be able to continue or have to find a new way of compensating it. So
we look forward. We'll have an update for you in the next hearing for the Q3, Q4.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Janaski, you'd probably be surprised if I didn't take you back to the behavioral program. So you heard my discussion with VEIC about Efficiency Vermont's long-term strategy and how they're going to deal with the lighting decline issue. And Mr. Wall alluded to it too. We know we have it. We know we have to deal with it. Maybe unfoundedly, I'm concerned that we may just supplant the loss of lighting with more behavioral treatments and treat the heck out of these folks and save a lot of energy. So tell me, what is BG&E's long-term strategy with regard to its behavioral program? Efficiency Vermont kept it the same, didn't increase it at all for 20 years in their future portfolio mix. What's BG&E's view of that?
What I will tell you is that with the behavior working group ongoing still, we are actively researching and investigating with the other utilities in Maryland and talking internally to my peers as well to determine what the future portfolio looks like for BGE. We will agree that a diverse portfolio is the best for any energy efficiency program. What I will tell you as well is that the three topics that the Commission brought to the behavior working group's attention of your concern, we're actively having in-depth conversations about them. We're working with third parties such as Navigant, Oracle, and Itron to gain a better understanding of the industry research out there and the methodology that other utilities are using. What I will say at this moment, Mr. O'Donnell, is that we look forward to having a final report to you by end of year with our decisions about going forward.
Well, we'll make the decisions. You can give us your recommendation.
Recommendations, sorry, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think the last report may have got that mixed up too. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. This has been an informative presentation, as has all of them today. We've covered a lot of ground today, heard a lot of updates regarding the first half of the year from our utilities, and we have many more utilities to come before us tomorrow. In terms of tomorrow, we will start at 10 a.m. We'll begin with the PHI companies, both Pepco and Delmarva, and then we'll move on from there. So thank you for a great day, and we'll see you back here in the morning.